Ladies and gentlemen, there is a curious power in silence. It unsettles, provokes, and at times unearths the hidden things within the soul. Words can conceal, distract, and soothe, but silence has a way of stripping away the masks we wear. It is in the absence of noise that the true nature of a person is revealed, whether it be virtue or vice, light or darkness. Silence is a mirror. It does not lie. When confronted with it, the restless soul thrashes, for it cannot bear to be left alone with itself. In the stillness, the demons within pride, envy, deceit, and fear are stirred. They demand to be drowned in noise, in endless conversation, in ceaseless distraction. The one who cannot endure silence is often the one most tormented by what it reveals. Silence is also a test of power. Many seek dominance through words, shouting, boasting, manipulating, but take away their ability to speak, and their authority crumbles. A soul truly at peace does not require constant assertion. It does not fear the quiet. The uneasy mind, however, must fill the void lest it be swallowed by the weight of its own conscience. Silence is a weapon against deception. A liar thrives in noise, where half-truths and misdirections cloud reality. But ask no questions, offer no arguments, simply wait and watch as their own words become their undoing. A guilty conscience cannot abide stillness. It must either confess or destroy itself trying to escape. Silence is not merely an exposer of darkness, it is also a purifier. It forces a reckoning, a confrontation with oneself. The righteous are not afraid of this, for they have nothing to fear in the quiet. The wicked, however, unravel. This is why they rage against it, why they seek to fill every void with noise, distraction, and self-justification. Silence possesses a peculiar force, one that strips away pretension and forces reality into the open. In a world accustomed to the ceaseless clamor of voices, opinions, and distractions, silence is unsettling. It does not flatter or distort, it simply is. And in its presence, the truth, however inconvenient, however long buried, begins to surface. When a person falls silent, the mind no longer has the luxury of hiding behind words. Words are often a shield, a clever means of obscuring what lies beneath. They can be used to deflect, to persuade, to deceive. But in the absence of words, when no more explanations are given, and no more distractions remain, the soul is laid bare. A man at peace with himself can sit in silence without unease. His conscience does not accuse, nor does his mind frantically search for an escape. But the restless man, the one with something to hide, finds silence unbearable. He fidgets, he forces conversation, he fills the void with anything, any noise, any movement, rather than be left alone with what silence threatens to reveal. This is why silence is often feared. It is not merely the absence of sound, it is the presence of something deeper, something that cannot be manipulated or controlled. In moments of forced quiet, whether in solitude or in the presence of others, a person's true disposition is revealed. The proud grow uncomfortable, for they are accustomed to asserting themselves through speech, ensuring they are heard and acknowledged. The deceitful grow anxious, for their power lies in their ability to weave narratives, and without words their control begins to slip. Even the fearful struggle, for silence has a way of magnifying their inner turmoil, making their hidden uncertainties louder than any external noise ever could. Silence does not merely expose individuals, it lays bare relationships. Two people who share a genuine bond can sit together in comfortable quiet, their connection needing no embellishment. But those whose interactions rely on shallow chatter find silence unbearable, for it exposes the emptiness beneath the words. Likewise, a person who avoids solitude at all costs, who constantly seeks the presence of others, or drowns themselves in distractions, is often running from something, perhaps a truth they are unwilling to face. Even deception, which thrives in confusion and noise, crumbles before silence. A liar speaks to maintain control over a narrative, to bend perception in their favor. But if one refuses to engage, refuses to interrupt, and simply allows them to speak until they have nothing left to say, inconsistencies begin to appear. Given enough silence, the truth inevitably forces its way to the surface. The power of silence is not in its emptiness, but in what it allows to be seen. It does not impose, but it reveals. And that which cannot withstand silence, that which crumbles or grows uneasy in its presence, was never built on truth to begin with. Silence is a force that many underestimate, yet it carries an unsettling power that can stir the depths of the human soul. To the restless, silence is not a refuge, but a confrontation, a mirror that reflects their innermost thoughts and fears with unrelenting clarity. It strips away distractions, dismantles facades, and forces a reckoning with what lies beneath. Those who carry unease within them often seek to drown it in constant noise, surrounding themselves with endless conversation, music, entertainment, or even the hum of daily responsibilities. They do this not because they enjoy sound for its own sake, but because they fear what will emerge in its absence. For the restless soul, silence is an unwelcome guest. It settles in like an oppressive weight, pressing upon them with a presence that demands acknowledgement. When the noise ceases, when there is no more small talk to fill the void, when there is no task to busy the hands or mind, they are left alone with themselves. And for some, that is the most terrifying thing of all. Without distraction, their thoughts grow louder, their anxieties more pronounced, their regrets and guilt creeping in with an urgency they can no longer suppress. It is in these moments that one realizes how much of life is spent running not towards something but away. There is a reason why those burdened by guilt or unresolved conflict cannot abide silence. It forces them to listen, not to the words of others, but to the quiet, persistent voice of their own conscience. When all else is still, their mind replays old conversations, past decisions, missed opportunities. The things they have buried begin to surface, and the truths they have ignored begin to demand recognition. This is why many people seek noise as a form of escape. The television hums in the background, the phone stays within reach. Social engagements are stacked one after another, all to avoid being left alone in the quiet, where their own thoughts become inescapable. The restless soul is also impatient with silence because it denies them the ability to control the moment. In conversation, they may assert dominance, steer the narrative, or use their words to shape perception. But silence does not yield to control. It cannot be argued with, debated, or bent to one's will. It simply exists, unmoved by urgency or desire. To those who thrive on constant validation, this is unsettling. Silence refuses to feed ego, refuses to grant reassurance, and instead leaves a person to sit with the reality of who they are when no one is watching. It is for this reason that silence is both feared and necessary. It is feared by those who are unready to confront themselves, but it is necessary for growth, for self-awareness, for the kind of deep reflection that leads to transformation. The one who cannot bear silence is the one who most needs to face it. Until they do, they will continue seeking noise, not realizing that what they truly fear is not the absence of sound, but the presence of truth. Silence has a way of revealing the true nature of power. Many believe power is demonstrated through words, through persuasion, argument, or sheer volume, but true authority does not rely on constant speech. False power, the kind built on insecurity, manipulation, or fear, cannot endure silence. It depends on noise to maintain its illusion, to keep others distracted, and to reinforce the presence of control. When silence enters the equation, it strips away these layers, leaving behind only what is real. A person who wields false power often uses words as a weapon. They assert dominance through constant instruction, correction, or even intimidation. They rely on their voice to impose their influence, believing that to speak is to command, and to command is to rule. But if their power is rooted in deception or insecurity, silence becomes their greatest enemy. Take away their words, refuse to react, and watch how their authority crumbles. They will fidget, demand a response, or attempt to provoke, because they cannot endure a moment where their dominance is not reaffirmed. They depend on the response of others to sustain their illusion of control. This is particularly evident in manipulation. A manipulative person thrives on conversation, on arguments, on the ability to twist narratives to their advantage. They construct elaborate explanations, plant seeds of doubt, and weave confusion through endless dialogue. But if met with silence, their power fades. They can no longer redirect, justify, or obscure. Instead, they are left exposed, their attempts at control reduced to empty words that hold no weight in the absence of engagement. Silence forces them to confront a reality where their influence is not as absolute as they believed. The same principle applies to those who seek validation through dominance. There are individuals who assert themselves not because they are wise or strong, but because they fear irrelevance. They raise their voices, interrupt, and insist on having the last word, not out of conviction, but out of a need to be perceived as powerful. Yet a person who is truly powerful does not fear silence. They do not need to fill every moment with speech, nor do they require constant acknowledgement. Their authority is not dependent on external affirmation, but on an internal certainty that speaks louder than words ever could. In contrast, the one who wields real power understands the weight of silence. They recognize that restraint is often more commanding than outspokenness. A leader who does not rush to fill every void with words commands greater respect than one who speaks incessantly. A person who does not feel the need to respond to every provocation holds a power that cannot be easily shaken. True strength is revealed not in the ability to speak, but in the ability to remain silent when speech would serve no purpose. Silence is the great equalizer. It removes the false sense of authority that words can fabricate and reveals what is left when the noise fades. Those whose power is genuine do not fear silence, for they know their influence does not depend on constant assertion. But those who rely on noise to sustain their illusion of strength will find themselves powerless the moment silence enters the room. Silence has a way of unraveling deception in ways that words never could. A lie thrives in noise, in a flurry of justifications, explanations, and distractions. The deceiver depends on the ability to control the narrative, to steer the conversation in ways that confuse or disarm those who might seek the truth. But silence does not cooperate, it does not argue, it does not interrupt, and it does not offer the liar a way to twist reality. Instead, it simply waits, and in doing so, it forces the deception to collapse under its own weight. A dishonest person fears silence because it leaves them with nothing to manipulate. When confronted with stillness, their mind races to fill the void, to add more words where fewer would suffice. They elaborate unnecessarily, over-explain, and contradict themselves without realizing it. The more they speak, the more their deception unravels. Their discomfort grows, their voice wavers, and their carefully crafted illusion begins to fracture. Silence, in its patience, allows the liar to expose themselves. Silence is also an effective test of honesty. A truthful person does not feel the need to overcompensate. They state what is necessary and leave it at that. They do not panic in the face of quiet moments, nor do they scramble to justify themselves when no accusation has been made. But the dishonest person cannot abide stillness. They assume silence is an implicit challenge, a demand for further explanation, and in their attempt to defend what is false, they only make their deception more apparent. This principle is evident in arguments and confrontations. When a person is accused of wrongdoing, their reaction speaks volumes. The guilty often react impulsively, lashing out, becoming defensive, or attempting to redirect blame. They create noise to avoid scrutiny. But if met with silence, if their words are not met with immediate challenge or reassurance, they grow uneasy. The absence of reaction forces them to sit with their own dishonesty, to recognize that their usual tactics of evasion and distraction are ineffective. The weight of their own words becomes unbearable. In contrast, an innocent person does not fear silence. They do not rush to fill it with explanations because they know the truth requires no embellishment. Their stillness speaks for them, demonstrating an inner confidence that deception can never replicate. When someone accused of lying does not fight against silence but embraces it, it is often a sign that their integrity is intact. The power of silence extends beyond individual deception. It also exposes dishonesty on a larger scale. In a world filled with half-truths, propaganda, and manipulation, silence is a rare and powerful tool. It allows time for reflection, for falsehoods to contradict themselves, for clarity to emerge from confusion. Those who deceive others depend on the constant churn of distraction to keep their lies intact. But when the noise fades and nothing is left but silence, the truth stands on its own, and deception is laid bare for all to see. Silence has a way of revealing the true nature of a person. It is a test of character, exposing what lies beneath the surface when there is nothing left to say, no distractions to hide behind, and no immediate validation to seek. Those who are comfortable with silence demonstrate a sense of inner security, while those who struggle against it often reveal hidden fears, anxieties, or insecurities. It is in the quiet moments, when no words are exchanged, that a person's true disposition becomes apparent. A strong character does not fear silence. A person who is at peace with themselves does not require constant conversation or external affirmation to feel whole. They do not rush to fill every pause with words, nor do they feel the need to prove themselves through endless explanations. Instead, they embrace the quiet, recognizing that their worth is not dependent on how often they are heard. They understand that wisdom is often found in stillness, that patience is an extension of strength, and that self-restraint speaks louder than impulsive speech. On the other hand, those who find silence unbearable often reveal an internal struggle. There are those who mistake constant talking for confidence, believing that by dominating conversations they assert authority or intelligence. Yet in truth, such behavior often stems from insecurity, from a need to be validated or to mask self-doubt. They talk not because they have something meaningful to say, but because they fear what silence might reveal, whether about themselves or about how others perceive them. In moments of tension, silence can separate the wise from the impulsive. A person with integrity does not rush to defend themselves unnecessarily, nor do they feel compelled to respond to every provocation. They understand the value of measured speech and the power of restraint. In contrast, the one who cannot bear silence will often react impulsively, speaking out of turn, making rash accusations, or revealing more than they intended. Their discomfort exposes their lack of control. The ability to remain silent in conflict is another test of character. In arguments, silence can either be a sign of dignity or of avoidance, and the difference lies in intent. A person who refuses to engage in petty disputes demonstrates strength, choosing peace over unnecessary confrontation. But the one who withdraws from silence out of fear, unable to face the weight of truth, exposes a lack of courage. Silence in these moments becomes a measure of emotional resilience, separating those who can endure discomfort from those who seek to escape it. Even in relationships, silence is revealing. Two people who share a genuine bond can sit together in stillness without unease, comfortable in each other's presence without the need for constant affirmation. But when silence between individuals becomes a source of anxiety, it often points to deeper issues, insecurities, doubts, or unspoken tensions. How one navigates silence, both alone and in the company of others, is a reflection of their inner stability. It is not simply the absence of words, but a test of who they are when words are no longer there to shield them. Silence is a mirror, reflecting back the true state of the soul with an honesty that cannot be disguised. In the absence of sound, there is nothing to distract, nothing to distort, and nothing to shield a person from their own thoughts. It is in these moments of stillness that the hidden aspects of character rise to the surface, revealing what a person truly holds within. Whether it is peace or turmoil, contentment or restlessness, virtue or vice, silence has a way of making it all visible. When a person is at peace with themselves, silence is a companion rather than a tormentor. They do not need the constant validation of conversation or the endless background noise of distraction. Instead, they embrace the quiet, allowing it to deepen their understanding of themselves and the world around them. In such a person, silence reflects stability, self-awareness, and the kind of confidence that does not require external reinforcement. But when someone is plagued by inner conflict, silence becomes unbearable. It forces them to confront thoughts they would rather suppress, fears they would rather avoid, and emotions they have worked hard to ignore. The mirror of silence does not flatter or reassure, it simply reveals. This is why those who carry guilt or unresolved pain often seek to fill their lives with noise. They surround themselves with distractions, keeping their minds occupied so they never have to face what lurks beneath the surface. They fear being left alone in the quiet, because in that stillness the past speaks, conscience awakens, and reality becomes unavoidable. But no matter how much they run from it, silence always waits. It is patient, knowing that sooner or later, every person must look into the mirror it provides. Silence also reveals the nature of relationships. Two people who share genuine trust and understanding can sit together in comfortable stillness, their connection requiring no words to be validated. But when silence between two people becomes awkward or tense, it is often a sign that something is amiss. It exposes the unspoken conflicts, the hidden doubts, and the gaps that words have previously filled. Silence does not create distance, it simply reveals the distance that was already there. Even in the presence of others, silence acts as a mirror to character. The proud and boastful struggle with it, for they rely on their words to assert themselves. The manipulative find it threatening, for without conversation to steer, they lose control of perception. But those who are wise understand the power of stillness. They do not fear silence because they know it does not weaken them, it strengthens them. Their presence alone carries weight, not because of what they say, but because of who they are when they say nothing at all. Silence is the truest reflection of the self. It does not lie, it does not distort, and it does not make exceptions. It simply presents what is already there. Whether a person embraces or fears what they see in that reflection is the greatest test of all.